Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over some severe storms which are going to be impacting parts of the Ohio Valley and parts of the Mid-Atlantic for today. We're going to have some of these storms move through these areas for this afternoon especially. We already have an enhanced risk of severe weather in parts of the Mid-Atlantic and a bigger area of slight risk which goes from the Mid-Atlantic coast all the way back to the parts of Illinois and Missouri. So let's get right into it here, and let's start off with your current National Weather Service page. As you can see, we have some heat advisories in effect for parts of the Northwest, along with some red flag warnings and some excessive heat warnings. We have some more heat advisories in that orange color, which goes from parts of the Gulf Coast all the way up through parts of Nebraska, Iowa, Illinois, and Indiana. So we have a very wide area of heat advisories for today. And then we have a few pockets of excessive heat warnings in parts of Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Mississippi, and Louisiana. We also have some air quality alerts in effect for parts of the Northwest and parts of Minnesota as well. And then we have some flood watches in effect for southwestern Colorado and southeastern Utah. Yesterday we had a high temperature of 119 degrees in Death Valley, California, with a low temperature of 36 degrees in both Pierce, Idaho, and also 4 miles east-southeast of Escort Station, Maine. The highest rainfall report was 3.92 inches in Augusta, Georgia. No snowfall reports as of yesterday. So here's a look at the current Storm Prediction Center page. I was actually quite surprised when I opened this morning to see what risk outlook they had, and I was actually really surprised that they actually put up an enhanced risk of severe weather, considering that yesterday we only had a marginal risk over this entire area. So we have a slight risk which covers, again, much of the Ohio Valley and then all the way back into parts of the Mid-Atlantic coast. And then for parts of New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Delaware, we have a small area of enhanced risk, which is where we're dealing with the biggest threat of severe weather. I also think there will be a sizable threat of severe weather within this area as well. We're going to see the remnants of what was up in Wisconsin and Michigan move down into this area, and because of that, we could still see some severity within those storms. Taking a look at the tornado outlook, you can see that we have a 2% risk, which goes from parts of the coastal northeast all the way back to Illinois and Indiana. And then in the brown area, that's our 5% risk. That covers parts of West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, and also parts of Washington, D.C. And that's where we have that 5% risk of tornadoes. And that's where we have the highest risk of tornadoes as well. I don't think these will be a big threat for today, but I would not rule out that we see 1 or 2 tornado warnings go up within these areas, especially as you get further to the south. So within this area would probably be a better bet in terms of seeing tornadoes for today. Looking at the hail outlook, you can see that it's pretty much the opposite of the tornado outlook. You can see that we have a 15% chance of hail all the way to the west and everywhere east there in parts of the Ohio Valley and the coastal northeast and mid-Atlantic. It is within that 5% risk of hail. So we're not expecting too much hail, but if you do live out further to the west in parts of Indiana, Illinois, and I believe that even goes through parts of Missouri, then you do have the risk of some hail. Although even that area, we're not expecting a ton of hail. Looking at the wind outlook, this is where we have the biggest threats. So that entire area within the yellow has a 15% risk of seeing wind damage, and then a 30% risk within that enhanced region for parts of New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Maryland is where we have the highest risk of seeing some of those damaging winds. And I would definitely agree with this. I think definitely within this area is where I would bullseye for the strongest winds. We could be seeing some areas getting up near 60, 65, even 70 or more miles per hour with some of these wind gusts. So we are expecting a rather robust group of storms. Now, this is the NAM 3KM model. So this is not the only model that we could look at. I'm just using this because I've used it in every other video on this topic, on this particular severe weather event. So I'm going to continue to use it, but just know that we have many different other models that have different solutions. So the Storm Prediction Center is not just looking at what I'm looking at. They probably are looking at this model as well as many other models such as the HRRR and the RGEM model. So a couple other models that we could be looking at. I'm just using the NAM model to stay consistent with my videos. But again, there are many different solutions. So even if this model in particular shows a storm going to the north or to the south of your house, maybe in real life that storm could be right over your house, or that storm could dissipate a little bit faster than we are expecting, or it could strengthen a little bit more. So definitely we can't take this as 100% true, even though we're only a few hours out, because severe weather is one of the main weather events where even when you're 12 to 24 hours out, or even when the severe weather is happening on that same day, you still have a fairly rough idea of what's going to happen, and you don't have a very clear idea of what we're actually expecting. So looking at this model, you can see that by noon today Eastern time, we have a big cluster of rainfall, which is over the interior northeast and the Ohio Valley. We see what will become our bigger area of severe storms in parts of western Pennsylvania and northeastern Ohio. So this was moving through parts of the parts of southern Ontario, parts of Michigan, and now it's moving further to the southeast into parts of the mid-Atlantic. You can see that this entire arm of rainfall kind of moves off to the east. So now it's separated. We're going to zoom in on this in just a little bit, so you don't really have to pay attention to it for now, because we will review it in just 1 or 2 minutes. But right now we're going to focus on the one that's further to the east, this big area of rainfall. We will see that as we get around the afternoon hours, the amount of energy in the atmosphere and also the dew points are going to gradually rise. So we're going to start off the day with dew points right around 66 or 67, and gradually through the day, in some of these areas, we're going to have dew points up near 71, 72, even 73 degrees, and we're going to have CAPE values that gradually rise from around 100 to 200 to maybe 1 or 2,000 throughout the span of today in parts of the coastal northeast and the mid-Atlantic. So we're going to see these factors gradually rise, and that's why throughout the day, even though right now these storms don't seem too severe, they just look like plain rain, as we go through the day, they will continue to strengthen. So moving on to around 6 p.m. tonight Eastern time, we still have some of these storms in through eastern Pennsylvania. So these are when these storms are getting rather strong, and this is the same exact area, by the way, that has that 30% chance of seeing the wind damage. So you can see that that entire storm system perfectly fits through that enhanced risk area that they put up for today. So within that area, we're going to see a cluster of storms, many individual storms within one big group that are going to continue to roll on through here. Again, biggest threats being wind and potentially some small hail. We also can't rule out an isolated tornado or two, although I don't think that's going to be the main threat for today. And again, what's happening in parts of the Ohio Valley, we're going to touch on that in just a couple minutes. Then that storm system moves on by. So we don't get to see what happens in between there. You would assume that it would strengthen a little bit more, and then it would move onto the ocean, and then after it does that, it'll probably weaken out. You still have some storms going on in parts of southeastern New England by this point, so we still have a few bits of lightning and thunder going on there, mainly just a plain rainfall in parts of northern New England. It's too cold in those areas, only into the 60s and 70s to actually support some real robust thunderstorms. So we're not going to be able to get any thunderstorms up there, although it still definitely is a possibility that you hear maybe a rumble or two of thunder. Now zooming in for the Ohio Valley, they also are going to get a fairly robust line of storms. And again, this is on the NAM model. Not every single model is showing this particular line of storms, although I do think it is important to look at it, because if this does happen, then it could definitely be rather strong and rather severe. So looking at around noontime Eastern today, so this would be around 11 a.m. Today in Central Time, and you can see that we have just a few showers in parts of Indiana and Ohio. Moving this on, you see that we get this one to split off. So further to the east, you can see that we have the remnants of that rainfall, that arm of rainfall, which has moved to the east already. So now that area of rainfall is all the way into the northeast. And what we're dealing with now is just kind of this little area that splits off, and this will be going pretty much due west or due south, and that's going to just continue to hammer on through parts of Indiana, Ohio, and eventually into Kentucky. Kentucky. By the time it hits southern Kentucky and into Tennessee, it should be rather weak. So it's not going to be a big threat into those areas. You can see that it does form a line of storms according to this model, and it would be rather strong. So the big threat would be an isolated tornado, probably on the northern edge of the northern edge of the storm system, and then heavy rainfall, strong winds potentially with this type of setup gusting up near 65 or 70 miles per hour. And again, we can't even rule out a isolated tornado. Again, that would probably be on the northern end of things, just based on what I'm looking at from the models. If we look at for around 8 p.m. Central Time today, we have those storms in through parts of Kentucky, southern Indiana, southern Illinois. So these are rather strong by this point, and it's just going to continue to move on further to the south, southwest, and as we move this on even further, so this would be around 11 p.m. Central, this would be 12 a.m. Eastern for tonight, and you can see that mainly just rainfall by this point, but we do have potentially still some convective activity or semi-convective activity in through parts of southwestern Kentucky and also into northern Tennessee. That all dissipates as we move into the early morning hours tomorrow. Taking a look at the total rainfall, you can see that we have those lines of storms that roll on through parts of Ohio, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and that's where you see some high values in terms of the rainfall. We're getting up near 1 to even 3 inches of rain at times. And then you also have in parts of Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, where we saw that line of storms move through, we have some of those higher values as well. We're around 1 to 3 inches of rainfall. You get further south, I would say if you're further south than the central line of Kentucky, that's when the amount of rainfall really starts to dip down under half an inch. So that's where we're getting less than probably an inch or even half an inch of rainfall. Taking a look at a few parameters, here's the high temperatures, and you can see the reason these storms are developing where they are. Look at the temperature difference. We're dealing with temperatures up in the 60s further to the north, parts of northern Pennsylvania. And just to use Pennsylvania as a kind of good example of this, because it is a fairly big state, if you go further to the south in southern Pennsylvania, you're down into the 80s. So within maybe just 100 miles or so within the same state, we're dealing with temperatures going from about 83, 84 degrees down to 68 or 67 degrees. So really warm temperatures on the southern end of things, fairly chilly temperatures on the northern end of things, considering that we are still in August. So we're starting to cool down a little bit with the general pattern we have. We have a trough in the east, so that is helping to cool down these temperatures. But that big sharp temperature difference is where these storms are going to start up. So you can, if you remember, they did start up within this area where you have a sharp temperature difference from northeast Ohio to north central Pennsylvania. They're going to continue to ride that transition zone all the way through southeastern Pennsylvania, and then eventually as they move offshore. So they're going to continue to stay right in between the cold and the warm air. That division is going to help to create instability, and I think that's one of the reasons that these storms continue to stay strong and even intensify throughout the day. Today, the other storm is going to just be off the amount of sheer heat and humidity that's in the atmosphere. We have temperatures into the mid 90s within this area. So because of that, that storm will be able to kind of re-intensify as it goes through this afternoon. Actually, going back one frame here, here's the dew point temperatures. And you can see that we're also dealing with fairly decent dew points all throughout parts of southern Pennsylvania, through Ohio, into West Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, southern New Jersey. That's where we have temperatures that are going to be right into the mid and low 70s. So that's definitely enough to support some of those thunderstorms. And if you look back through Indiana and Kentucky, we have those dew points that are getting up near 80 degrees, which is very, very high. So that could definitely be one of the reasons that that storm just kind of pops out of nowhere and starts to really intensify throughout the evening hours tonight. If we look at the CAPE values, the convective available potential energy, showing you how much energy is available in the atmosphere at any one given point, you can see that we have values all above 1,000 within this entire area. So that's enough to start up some thunderstorms, even though you don't have really high CAPE values, which would be around 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. Even though we don't have that, we still do have enough, considering that we have the added instability that's coming from that big temperature differential throughout parts of the Northeast. So you don't need that high of a CAPE value to actually get these thunderstorms to really develop. And that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.